The title of this session begins, How Private Equity is Transforming Iran's Economy. Is it? That's the question. I don't know. Is it really transforming the economy? Well, actually, better introduce yourself as well.
I'm Omid Gholamifar. I'm the founder and CEO of Zurich Invest.
Microphone is...
It's not on?
No, what's happening? Could we have a hand mic, please?
It works now, maybe. Yeah.
Is it working now? Well, have one anyway.
Yeah. So should we just introduce ourselves really quickly?
No, you go for it. It's okay.
Yeah, so I'm Omid Gholamifar. I'm the founder and CEO of Zurich Invest, which is a Swedish-Iranian investment company that was set up towards the end of last year in order to invest in the Iranian consumer space.
You sent me a slide which showed a very impressive return on assets for the Iranian economy.
So just to kind of take a step back, the most of the conversations with investors is Iran is very interesting, but how risky is it?
No.
And is the risk really too high to bear? Is it investable or not? And what I tried to do was, in a different and maybe innovative way, illustrate Iran as a country as one company. So if you could buy the whole of Iran through one investment, what would you expect? And that's what the slide is about.
It's an incredibly phenomenal rate of return on your assets, but that presumably means a phenomenal risk.
Well, do we have the slide here?
I don't think we do. Sorry, I don't know, but just explain. Oh, here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah.
So effectively,
so Iran up there on the left.
Yeah. So what I did here was I mapped out expected return on assets or actual historical return on assets versus GDP per capita for a bunch of countries in the world, and I used IMF data that is freely available to everyone, and this clearly shows that Iran is in a league of its own. It's not even close to the number 2. And we're talking percentage points here. So it's like 10 or 15% ahead of the next country. Now, I want to point out that these are macro data, which means that the numbers are quite sticky. So it doesn't change around a lot from year to year. So if we look at this for 2015, 16, 17, it looks like this. So one way to look at this, and I think it kind of tells the story about Iran, is if you think of a risk premium, so how much more do you get by investing in Iran versus many of the other countries on that graph, you see that you actually get paid a lot for taking that risk. Now, it doesn't mean that it's risk-free, but investing is about risk and returns. And for instance, if you look at South Korea, which has a neighbor called North Korea, that is more controversial than Iran, at least for the moment, you see that they offer a return on assets of 10% versus Iran at 45. So I think this clearly illustrates the supply-demand imbalance of capital that you've heard from many other panelists and companies over the last 2 days.
Golas, tell me, what does Iratel do?
Can you hear me? Yeah. Not only placebo effect. Iratel Ventures is a venture capital which is based in London and Tehran. So we have our team divided between London and Tehran, and we invest on Iranian startups with Iranian co-founders, both outside Iran in North America and Europe mainly, and inside Iran on a ratio of about 70 to 30. Yeah. And following what Omid said, venture capital in its DNA is the most risky investment. So we have to take risks. We are not used to be very much in our comfort zone anyway. So venture capital, we want one winner out of 10. And in the world, the venture capital return of investment is what? 25 to 30%, and we expect for our investment inside Iran this to be hopefully 60%, hopefully not 45, a little bit more, and that's what we bet on.
And how's your experience been so far?
We are quite young. Irrital Ventures has been 2 years. We have had 9 investments, 7 outside the country, 2 inside the country. And it's a very interesting market. The talent, the human capital, all of us know is there. The technology is there. The market is turbulent, but it is very attractive, and the finance is becoming more and more available. So we see all the elements of entrepreneurship becoming next to each other. And I think the world generally today has reached its entrepreneurial capacity of 52%, as they say. I believe in Iran, this is less than 5%, even 2%. Guys, do you have any other ideas? So it's a long way to go. So we have had a good experience. We are still waiting to see more success stories.
Okay. Said Mohammed, you're in venture capital. Do the same rate of success and failure? 1 in 10 is a pretty good ratio?
Can you hear me?
No, I think we need the hand mic.
Let me say that Shanas Venture Capital is a member of Post-sanctions Financial Group, and this is one of the frontier venture capital companies, firms in Iran. And this firm, in addition to other members, founded Iran Venture Capital Association since 2011. So seems to us that it's a kind of like an emerging market. It is an emerging society, and it is I mean, venture capital system of Iran. It's going to, build gradually.
Yeah.
So they are building these ecosystem from the very, very early stages. So yes, we do have lots of experience, more than 5 years of being in this ecosystem. And I want to say that if we are going to think about we don't want to exaggerate about the potentials of Iran's market and Iran venture capital, situation. But everyone knows that it is a kind of really blue ocean. Lots of potentials of available, lots of talents you can find in this country. Yes, you should face some kind of risks, political risks, financial risks, but the potentials, it is unreliable.
And how long will you have to keep your capital in there? I mean, what is your exit strategy?
Exit strategy.
I mean, most venture capitalists will have, 3 to 5 years and take...
To be honest, for chance of venture capital is more than 5 years. So we want to be with country, with any of companies in our portfolio, because we are not going to, we are not seeking some short-term profits.
No. So it's not like United States, for example?
Yeah.
No, okay. And finally, but certainly not least, Majid Zamani.
Well, first of all, thank you for having us here. And it's a relief, really, that Iran poll showed that most of the people are here for networking, and they already know what we want to say. But regarding your first question, is private equity transforming the Iranian economy? Of course not, and it won't. Most of the economy is governmental, public, and private equity, in essence, not the practice.
Yeah.
Private equity is a very small part of the economy. So we're not talking on private equity changing the economy. As Omid said, but this is a very good potential for investors who would like to invest in some industries in which private equity has large companies.
My naive interpretation of private equity is that you get very smart people who see a firm and they think it may be not using all its assets as well as it could, and that maybe the management is not as smart as it could be, and so private equity goes in there, manages to take over the company, sometimes leverage buyout or whatever, and then chucks out a lot of management, sells off some of the assets, and takes its profit. So it can be good, it can be somewhat cruel, but it seems to me that if you've got a country like Iran with a lot of family firms, how do you operate that sort of model? I mean, you can do it in Britain or the States or France or whatever, with a normal, quoted company, etc. But it must be rather tricky in Iran.
My point was that we have great potentials for private equity practice, almost what you said, because we have, of course, a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of room for more productivity, more improvement in all sort of functionalities in the companies. But first and foremost, we need private equity guys, people who know how to transform a company. And I think more than when we're talking about private equity, being a venture capital professional or a private equity practice, we are talking about the knowledge and expertise of transforming companies, just getting rid of inefficiencies, bringing on new people with expertise, and improving the return on assets and capital.
But without upsetting the incumbents.
Well, as I said, the private equity, private companies in Iran are not that big. So the whole discussion about private equity is in Iran. It's a great opportunity for foreign investors to come in, to bring expertise, to bring human resources that is needed, and to transform companies. I'm sure. Of course, there are risks, including the currency risk, but I think the returns will be so high that will compensate for at least foreign exchange risks.
Hamid.
Yeah, so when it comes to private equity, the definition of itself is very important. So private equity is usually associated with control purchases, private equity funds, leverage, and then financial engineering. In Iran, none of that works. So in Iran, what we do at Circland, it's more, if I wait to use a phrase, it's more growth capital than private equity. So you need to be much more opportunistic. We are open to buying minority positions in the best-run family businesses. We are, not necessarily looking for control if we can trust the corporate governance and the management. And there are some fantastic companies like that in Iran. So we don't use leverage, we don't have a private equity fund, and we don't require control. Over time, just like many other places in the world, as the terrain stabilizes, I think there will be opportunities to set up private equity structures and do proper private equity. But I think the word private equity should be literally read as private and equity. And that has two components. First of all, it's private capital coming in. So some of my investors are in the crowd, and they're private business owners and entrepreneurs.
Are they happy with you?
So far, so good. I think you should ask them later. And the second part is equity, because I think the Iranian story starts with equity. There are a lot of people out there that think that the bond yields are very attractive. But I think, and that is the way you can transform the economy, not overnight, but over time, by starting small, starting with equity, and working your way up by trying to add more and more value to these companies over time.
Golnaz, you agree?
I think it's important to note that, let's say last year we had about $25 billion investment in venture capital globally. More than 60% was in the United States, about 15% in Europe, and only less than 30% in the whole emerging market. So venture capital, private equity is a rather new thing in emerging market, and the problem of family offices and the traditional core is not only for Iran. I think what I can see is that the venture capital is changing some perspectives in Iranian market. Not only it is bringing a new way of financing, but it is introducing a new culture of being more aggressive. Start to look outside, look at the Bill Gates and big guys, and start to dream big, and then get advice from people who are global. So this is very valuable, and how we are going to break that traditional structure is something that it is still to see.
Well, you as a venture capitalist, I mean, when you enter the Iranian market, what do you bring apart from money?
That's a very good question, John, especially about Iran, because when we invest outside Iran, we don't usually get much involved with the portfolio companies. We help them with business development, expansion from Europe to US if we can, but not really more. But inside Iran, you can't really sit 5,000 miles away and Skype. It doesn't work. We all know. You have to be there. You have to have face-to-face meetings. You have to support them by being there. So we have a quite good structure now, I think, for managing our portfolios from inside the country by building an innovation center that we can bring not only finance, but the advisors, the mentors, the potential to expand outside the country, register the company outside Iran, and support them in different aspects.
So, Mohammed?
Let me add that Iran's venture capital ecosystem is, as I told you, it is an emerging ecosystem. But I would like to say that we do have some kind of VC funds in Tehran stock market and also some VC funds in Faraburs stock market. Shanaso VC firm has a healthcare fund in Faraburs stock market. So yes, ecosystem is going to gradually be mature. We are on the way, and we do not have a very mature ecosystem. But if we are serious or not, yes, private sectors are very serious about this. And also, I would like to add that the government, Rouhani administration, is very, very serious about building this ecosystem because they know that if they want to improve the whole aspects of, the economy of the country, they should find some kind of innovative ways.
Majid, do you find that you are having to spot opportunities and you're making all the effort, or are people coming to you from Iran?
You mean investors from
Yes.
Iran?
Well, I mean, companies in Iran who think, oh, actually, maybe these guys can help us.
Of course, it's because we market ourselves as the investment bankers, so people usually come to us. But I don't think we are in a position to help a lot of them. I wanted to get back to the practice of private equity, which is not only bringing money into one company. I think I disagree with Omid that we cannot have proper private equity in Iran. But I think a lot of investors shouldn't try that if they cannot. What Omid is doing, I think, is right because finding already successful companies and riding on the market opportunity, that's a very sensible strategy. But look, if we had the mentors in Iran, we already had successful companies. We wouldn't have the kind of inefficiency and lack of productivity that we have right now. So I think if people want to bring money, it's a wise decision to go with minority and just rely on successful managers.
Yeah.
But if they want to actually play a bigger role, they have to bring the technology of the private equity. That's what's needed more than money. We don't have problem raising money from inside for companies. But companies are not sure that the type of money that we're bringing for them would help them other than financial help. So
You mean they fear losing control? Or?
yeah, they might feel that they're losing control to people who might not understand the business as much as they do.
Yeah.
So, and might be counterproductive at points. So, again, I believe there are good opportunities in terms of market and also in terms of improving productivity in the companies. But we don't have that technology. We don't have the kind of mentors and people who can restructure companies. And we're not talking only about the venture capital portfolios. And let's be honest, our e-commerce people, the people who now have done successful ventures, just like Alibaba that they were talking, they had the DNA. No one helped them. We have some successful practice in venture capital in the country, but show us at least one sample that a private equity or venture capital company in Iran supported a very small startup to a unicorn. Well,
Are there any unicorns in Iran?
I think so, yes.
Yeah? Okay. I mean,
I think what I fully agree with what Manjit says. I just think that we can't have too high of an expectation too fast. I think you need to take the first step and then the second step. So in our structure, I'm very proud to have Mohsen Tawakkol as a partner, who's the ex-CEO of Ericsson in Iran. I think someone of that stature with that level of position can help a lot of these companies with the stuff that Majid is talking about. It doesn't have to be Henry Kravis, so to speak, because you're not competing at that level. You're not competing with Warren Buffett or Blackstone. Among my investors, I'm happy to have some of the founders of the best FMCG companies, some of the people who've run them as CEOs. Now, they're not working full-time on this, but they're regularly engaged with the company that we've invested in.
So there's a mentoring
For sure, for sure. And I just think, I fully agree with Majid. My point was that private equity, in terms of private equity fund, leverage and control, doesn't exist in Iran today and probably won't for a while.
I mean, when Majid mentioned the word unicorn, I came back to him. I mean, a unicorn, as I understand it, is, apart from the mythical beast, is a company worth $1 billion. Now, I don't know what that would be in reals, but I mean, are there such companies in Iran?
Yes, I think the DigiColor is currently worth around $1 billion.
And how would you value it? From the stock market quotation, or
no?
Or what you would be willing to pay for it?
Comparables in the region with multiples of revenue and sales, basically.
Can I just add? I mean, one of the important things to add to Majid said, a lot of people don't notice, it's shocking. Iran is actually the world's 18th largest economy on a PPP adjusted basis. If the sanctions hadn't been there, it would probably be bigger.
And you would be the biggest in the Middle East?
Probably.
Without sanctions?
Probably. So that's the size. I think the growth forecasts, with the population growth and reasonable productivity, we're looking at somewhere between 4 to 8% GDP growth per year, which is really standing out on a global scale. We have these return on assets, and these are return on assets. It doesn't have the leverage component, which is effectively, the Iranian balance sheet is effectively totally de-geared, doesn't have any debt to speak of, at least not outside debt. Now, there are some banking challenges, but not that much debt. The consumer is totally delevered, and the valuations are below average. So if you look at the components, it's definitely there for there to be many, many more unicorns, both among e-commerce companies and other companies that are growing from a small scale.
Before I throw this out to the audience, a very quick question to each of you. If there's one thing that would improve, from your point of view, the Iranian economy, what would it be, Gulnaz?
I would improve the stability, but I don't know how.
Stability?
A stable market, because as I said, we have other elements. The finance, the talent, the technology is there. I think government is really supporting knowledge-based startups. But we have a turbulent market. So we don't know what is the addressable market really. So when we say the valuation of DigiColor, what is the risk-adjusted valuation? I doubt if it is 1 billion. And it changed from today to tomorrow. If that will be improved, I don't know.
Said Mohammed.
Let me say that there's a kind of joke in Iran about venture capital ecosystem. They say that any Iranian, any one startup and one venture capital. What does it mean? It means that it's going to be a very, very, very big ecosystem. And let me say, frankly, say that what we have done in more than 5 years, most of it was before JCPOA. And you know that nowadays Iran is under the primary sanctions. So are we here, Majid said that all of us are here for some kind of networking. Are we here to ask for money, ask for some kind of expertise? No. We are here to offer a kind of blue ocean. Every person, every investor who is ready, who has the passion to take risks, there is a very, very, interesting and attractive potential in the Middle East. No one can say not. So we are here to offer them some potentials.
Okay, so there's no single recommendation.
No.
That you're happy with things as they are. Okay,
Yeah.
Majid.
I didn't get your question.
Well, if there were one thing in changing the economy or the politics or whatever of Iran that would help you in your business, what would it be?
I would give the economic policy management into hands of one single person. Just we did our foreign policy with Mrs. Zarif, and we have capable and good people for doing that. We are suffering from different divisions having different policies in our economy. And I think this government is trying to do that. I think if that has been done, we will have a jump in our economic
It's an interesting
growth.
observation, because there was a question in the earlier panel about who's in charge, basically, if you want a decision. Amit.
Well, I think, John, Iran is neither perfect nor risk-free, but it actually has a lot of things going for it. It has a big market, it has a lot of surrounding big markets, it has a young population, well-educated, a lot of natural resources, good infrastructure. What is lacking is capital. Now, how do you get capital? And we shouldn't move away from that issue, because every single panel up here have been bringing that issue up. So how do you get capital? And I think what Bourse and Bazaar and Adam Smith conferences are doing here, what we're trying to do with Circland, meeting with investors and informing them about what's there, rather than having them reading in the papers. I think, however small that is, I think it can have tremendous snowball effects over time. So that's the single largest change that I can see.
Okay. Well, let me tell you, we've got this young and educated audience here. So let me ask for their questions. Hands up, please. Anybody who would like to? Ambassador Tetsi, please. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. A very short question, differently from what I am guilty of doing generally. John, how important is for private equity market and development the removal of monitoring measures from the Financial Action Task Force? Has there any negative influence? FATF still existing measures, or you consider that this is something that doesn't really matter for developing further private equity? Thank you.
Did you get the question?
I think so.
Financial Action Task Force, and you're suspended happily from the blacklist. So, yeah, Amit.
Yeah, obviously, banking channels do matter in today's world. There's a lot of compliance going on, but I think there was somebody yesterday who said, we really don't need all banks working with Iran at the same time. There are enough banks doing business with Iran in a compliant way, and I don't necessarily see that as a big hindrance. I think one of the key misunderstandings here is that I think you need to separate the pipe from the water. People are complaining a lot about the pipe, but it's really the water that is also lacking. So if the water is there, the pipe will be there as well, and I'm certainly happy to chat offline if anybody needs any more guidance on that.
Okay.
I think there are two different investors when we're talking about foreign investors. The one who they know what they're doing, they know Iran, and they want to invest. They will find a way. And I think the regulations now in place in Europe will actually give them legal facility to actually transfer the money into Iran. And there are other people who hear a lot and they get excited. They get to talk to bankers, etc. They probably will see that as a blocker to their investment.
Actually, on a sort of slightly related point, I mean, you've got all these different registers about ease of doing business, competitiveness, et cetera, There's ranking lists from World Economic Forum, World Bank, et cetera. How important do you think those are for foreign investors or potential foreign investors?
I think it is important, but it is good that we are not good in that ranking. If we were that good, the returns were not that high, right? That's the challenge, and comes with the potential. Again, those investors who are built for this challenge, they would come, they would love it.
Okay.
John,
Oh, media.
when I started in the investment industry a decade ago, somebody told me, if it's in the papers, it's in the price. So
Yeah.
there's always two sides to everything. And I think a lot of people who are scared of Iran just look at one side, and that side, even that side is wrong, and we
Yeah.
can discuss that. But the point is that you get these returns exactly like Majid said because of all these other stuff. So
Yeah.
one of my investors always tells me, I don't care how difficult it is because it makes it much more difficult for everybody else. So there is an offsetting mechanism here that is often forgotten.
Yeah, good point. More questions? Yes, gentleman at the back.
I tried yesterday to make awareness about a digital economy, a new economy. On the point of, as a private equity, how traditional economy could engage with these new modern, economy, new business models.
How does a traditional economy reconcile itself with the new digital economy? Who wants to take that challenge?
Are you
Majid.
talking about digital economy or about private equity kind of practice?
I can give
Mead,
a
go
step.
for it, yeah.
So I think if it's on the digital side, I can just generally, many societies have had problems with that and are going through an adjustment phase, and I don't think Iran will be much different. It will, of course, be different, but much different. But just on a more general point, a lot of the Iranian companies, and I'm not thinking about the startup space now, I'm thinking of the traditional companies in the consumer space that we're focused on, are not set up to receive funding effectively, right? They're not structured in that way. They don't have that mentality. They don't necessarily understand why anybody would want to invest in their company or why they should let anybody in. So you got to take it the way you find them, and you need to spend a lot of time preparing them, having them understand what you're looking to do, and it just takes time. There is no magic formula. I don't know if that was an answer to your question, but that was the best I could do.
Any final question?
Sorry, I could
No,
also
sorry, Majid, yes.
allude to that. As you know, a lot of our resources in our economy are managed by the banking system rather than the capital market. And I'm seeing commercial banks are turning their attention to the digital economy. And we see here and there some actually good efforts and good investments. And I think even if it's a fashion among the banks to just go into that direction, finally, during some years, then the practice will settle in, and we will have more resources directed toward the new economy, the digital economy, and hopefully that would increase the size of that professional practice. And banks, because they are managing these big resources, they could have a role there, and I could see some good efforts and investment in that area.
Okay. Any very last question? Yes, gentleman there, and that must be the last one. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Raul Harad. I'm head of finance for Asia and Middle East at Solidians. My question for you is, one of the things we struggle with are finding comparables or multiples that we can use. There's not a lot of transactional multiples that can be used historically, and my question is, which markets do you usually look at for comparables in terms of, the returns that we have are particular because Iran is so particular? So which markets do you consider to be comparable at this point to use as multiples?
Golnaz?
That's a very good question, because I'm not sure if Iranian, as I said, valuation model we can really use multiples who we are going to compare to. So the 20-30% I say above the return that we expect is based on the predicted cash flow that we have for some of the startups. In the region, I think really the markets that we can compare Iran to in terms of startups and innovations are Turkey, Egypt, because of the population. Lots of activities are happening in the region, but the human capital is not comparable in the whole GCC compared to Iran. So I agree with you that it's not as transparent as it should be.
Okay, Majid?
Sorry, I was lucky enough to do valuation for perhaps the first investment in any startup in Iran. I've had that problem since 6 years ago. And usually when we want to do this, because there are not a lot of unicorns or comparables in even the region, when we want to do this, we'll get all the comparables in the world that we could. So from the developed countries to Indonesia, Malaysia, the Arab countries, and then we'll find the real comparables in terms of the economic situation, the population, et cetera, et cetera. So usually, because there are not many of them, we try to get all of them and then analyze them and then come up with, at the end, it's the judgment of the evaluator, and at the very end, the judgment of the investor that will accept to put the money in such a startup.
Very briefly said, Mohammed, yes.
Venture capital ecosystem of Iran is an iceberg. So there are some kind of hidden facts of this iceberg. The most famous part of it is ICT-based startups or ICT-based companies, but I should add that you should think also about some other fields. For example, healthcare is very, very important in terms of venture capital investment. So that's it. And recently, Chance of Venture Capital released a kind of report about venture building in Iran and some kind of hidden facts of this iceberg. Anyone may be interested to have this report, I can send him by email or the copy of this.
Amit, final word.
And I'm going to give you a boring question, boring answer, but multiples doesn't take into consideration returns, growth, and risk. It's just a very simple rule of thumb. And I think when it comes to Iran, you really need to think about it bottom up. It's a very unique and special and challenging situation. So frankly, I think you can look at all the multiples you want, but at the end of the day, you need to take the specific context of the company, the industry, the management, and so on into consideration to be able to come up with something that makes sense.
Amit, thank you very much. Golnaz, thank you very much. And Mohammed, thank you very much. Majid, thank you very much. A big round of applause to all of this panel. Thank you.